I try to show the deepest crisis and natural disaster of whole of European history. This was the crisis of 14th century, the crisis of subsistence system, the crisis of contemporary economy, the crisis of society, and crisis whole of the religion, each of the religion. From this crisis was born a modern world. Look at the steps of adaptation to the crisis. Very interesting, it's possible you have experiences with psychologists. It's a quite a general psychologist suggestion. The people able to learn from the problem, from the mistakes, from the fail, from the success. No reason to learn, no reason. A little bit this is the same situation in the case of civilization. The most important innovation introduced on the time of crisis. Recently we are living in the crisis, therefore this is a possibility for learning for us. Okay, good. How try to learn high Middle Ages societies and civilization from the crisis? One of the most important form of adaptation is centralization. If we are looking, for example, a contemporary political system, bifurcated the political system. One direction, a centralization. Other direction survived a feudal, scattered, divided system. Of course, the main way, the highway of European civilization on the time of late Middle Ages was the centralization, like performed England, France, or Russia. The second step, effect of state formation. The first one, unified everything. For example, unified the taxes, unified fees, and unified a seigneurial, a feudal dues. The second one, overcome a coordination failure and destroyed the rival lords and the feudal anarchy. Organized a centralized army who destroyed the regional bandits and regional power of feudal lords. The second one, this is the first way of systemization, of weight, of measure, of legal codes. The second phase of systemization will be the Century of Enlightenment in the 18th century. The next one, reduce the opportunity of aristocracy stationary bandits. This means in the feudal society, a feudal society quite typical, regional wars among different feudal lords. In consequence of centralization of political power, centralization of army, behind the king, behind the emperor, had enough military power for destroying a feudal division and the feudal regional anarchy. Forms of adaptation, look at the next one. Black Death reduced the proportion of and underemployed population. Why so interesting? Look at, for example, living standards. Living standards of different period. The highest living standard of the century, of course, the 20th century. The 20th century, 21st century, it's not a closed and completed century. Therefore, the last one, a 20th century. 20th century, whole of the human history, from Australopithecus to us, produced the highest living standards for contemporary. But according to modern concept, century by century, year by year, improve the performance of society and the economy. It's not true. It's not true. The development of human history, not linear. But in our brain, we are a modern people, and we are thinking that recently the iPhone mobile phone which published and which made this year is better than 5 years ago. There is somehow coded our mentality that we are living in the trajectory of improving. It's not true. The second highest living standard produced a 15th century. A 15th century. Why? Because on the time of 14th century decreased so much human population. You remember to this trajectory. In the 2nd century, population of Europe estimate around 50 million in Europe. In the 6th century, approximately 23. In the 10th century, again 50 million. In the 14th century, on the peak of overpopulation, 90 million. And to the 50th century, it's collapsed and disappeared, almost 30 million European. It's down. Therefore, the people who survived the great disaster necessary to pay very good manner. And how we can compare a living standard of 20th century and the 15th century? It's very easy. Probably you know the basket of consummation. Basket of consummation. Look at, for example, salary a carpenter. Carpenter worked in the 20th century, even in the 15th century. And there is, for example, a salary of carpenter. How many person use for lodging? How many person for entertainment? And how many percent of salary save? And with help of basket of consummation, very easy to compare living standard of different centuries, different historical periods. And the second one in the 15th century. For survived people, rose living standards. Rose, why? Because decreased the offer of work power. Okay. The next one, agriculture. In the frame of agriculture appear new plants. New plants. It's very, very interesting. I spent my childhood, as I told to you, Eastern Hungarian religious community. Very conservative. The peasant society, very conservative. I remember my father participation in the meal, sit down to the table, no more, and waiting that my mother put the different meals on the table. It's very, very conservative. And there is a list of my father which would like to eat, no more. It's 20 or 30 meals, no more, very conservative. And introduced a new plant, it's not so easy, not so easy. My villages, it's a village of animal husbandry. During my childhood, I ate meat with sausages with meat. One of my university student period, I tried to be vegetarian for 1 week. Because I became so weak that I'm not able to walk. Yeah, it's somehow, I don't know, it's my stomach or my digestive system not able. It's addiction somehow. I have meat addict people. Necessary to live together with this addiction. And I remember, there is a Bulgarian student, no, in eastern part of Europe, a very famous Bulgarian gardener. A Bulgarian gardener. It's a very special category. Why? Because the Bulgarian gardener able produce a very large scale of vegetables and fruits. If some area of Hungary arrived a Bulgarian gardener, it's open the window for new form of vegetables and the fruits. And I remember during my childhood, one Bulgarian gardener arrived to my village. And my father worked together with the Bulgarian, I don't know, I don't remember his name, Okay, it's very, very long. Dayan, I don't know, it was a Christian name, I don't remember, Dayan somebody. And one day, my father arrived at home with a very miraculous vegetable. Took to the table and we look. It's a meteorite, I don't know, it's very strange. And my mother went to her girlfriend to picking information, which is the best form of cooking. Because it happened 30 years ago, not 40 years ago. Not in the Middle Ages, 40 years ago. In the last third of the 20th century. The strange vegetables was a cauliflower. A cauliflower. Recently, it's very simple vegetables, but introduction to a new community, it's not so easy. Because the peasant community, a closed community, it's very, very conservative. And step by step, it's developed adaptation, new vegetables. Look at the Middle Ages, much more conservative. But in consequence of experience of the subsistence crisis, much wider the window for adaptation, opening of new plants. Plants arrived from Islamic countries via Mediterranean basin. Rice, spinach, sugarcane, artichoke, and probably eggplants to southern Europe. And hops in northern Europe, it's both form of the hops, because hops, important raw material for making beer, for example. And flax, you know, it's a very healthy, it's very small cereals, is a flax across the continent disappear. Okay, form of adaptation. Other commercial adaptation, monetary unions, because it's a great problem in the market and the fair, changing a different currency. It's a very problematical. And large region of Europe unified the currency. The second one introduced a regional currency, like for example, Florentine florin in Italy, Venetian ducats, it's gold currency, and in the international benchmarks, this form of the currency became international benchmarks. Appear a regional fairs which organize regional and interregional trade in Europe. Okay, very important consequence of subsistence crisis are urbanization. It's very different compared with the modern time. Why? Look at, for example, a wartime and the time of the crisis. Everybody in modern time, in the 20th century, for example, everybody escaped to rural area. Why? Because in rural area, a peasant and the peasant granaries had a stock for survival. But in the Middle Ages, the reaction of the contemporaries for crisis basically different. Why? Because it's possible, I told you in the last week, Middle Ages agriculture, very simple. Wine and wheat agriculture. Therefore, large region used very small cycle of cereals. Wheat, barley, rye, no more. If the weather bad for cereals, not only one villages, whole of the region was a bad harvest. Therefore, a peasant on the time of series of bad harvest escaped to the city. Why? Because in the city had granary of state, granary of church, and granary of rich people, which distribute for the beggars, for the poor people. Therefore, in the traditional time, in the Middle Ages, the highest chance of survival was and were in the city. Therefore, on the time of the crisis, everybody from the rural area moved to the cities. Improved the marketing and distribution system. More people, as I mentioned, moved partly temporary or continuously to the city, and the labor market became more efficient because the peasant who immigrated to the city temporarily moved back to the rural area for plowing, for harvesting, for example. Okay, if we are looking the Wiener region of the 14th century crisis, southern and northwestern Italy, Castile, not by chance, which region organized Spain, the Spanish kingdom? Castile. After the 14th century, a Spaniard student? No? Okay, Castile became, you know, the rivalry between different regions. In the case of Spanish history, a rivalry between Castile and Catalonia. For example, and very interesting in the football teams rivalry, somehow it's a mirror the historical rivalry. And very interesting on the case of, if possible, I told to you, in the Scottish student, no? In the Scotland there is a two dominant, I am a football player, partly, and there is a rivalry between Celtic Rangers and the Glasgow Rangers. Glasgow Rangers, this is the football team of Protestant local Scottish people, and the Celtic immigrant Irish Celtic people, rivalry. In the case of Spanish football league, Barcelona, which is a regional power, you know the Johan Cruyff famous sentence, Barcelona is an army of Catalonia, Barcelona Football Club. And very interesting, the Hungarian Football League, because in the Hungarian Football League, two football teams won the, there is on the list of championship, most winner of the championship of Hungarian Football League. The first one is named Ferencváros. It's one district of Budapest, one German district of Budapest historically. Between the two World Wars, in this district, Franzstadt is a historical name, lived a German-speaking people. This is the champion of the championship. It's a Ferencváros, and the second one, MTK. It's Hungarian Athletic Club. It's may translate, founded by Jewish. And very interesting, in the Hungarian championship, this is the place of rivalry, two ambitious minority, a German and the Jews. Very interesting. Okay, but turn back to the story. Castile, the second winner of 14th century crisis, Holland. It's very important. One district, one region, one county only. Former time, Flanders, recently is a part of Belgium, and Holland. This is the core area of later formed Netherlands and southern Germany. Loser of transformation, Flanders, which lost the key position, Tuscany, which lost the key position, Sicily, which was unbelievable place on the time of High Middle Ages. It's a not bilingual area, it's a fourlingual. On the High Middle Ages, official language was the Greek, the Arabic, because large Arabic community lived in Sicily, German, very strange. Why? Because one period of Holy Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Emperor lived in Sicily. Therefore, official language was and the local language, of course. And Catalonia, as I mentioned, oppositely in front of Castile. Okay. Very important organization of market, regional market. For example, one of the most efficient form of transporting of meals which was a driving routes of cattle For example, to London organized driving routes of cattle from Scotland and from Venice. Look at, for example, France. In the case of Paris, organized the cattle routes from Massif Central, the French mountain area. In the case of eastern part of Europe, from Hungary, exported unbelievable quantity of cattle to Czech area, Bohemia, to Vienna, and to Venice. Very interesting. 1 year to other, 100,000 cattle driven, for example, from Hungary. Okay, cattle trade and trade of precious metal. Okay, look at the conclusion. How we can take into consideration the crisis of subsistence system. Look at the conclusion of Stephen Robert Upstein, professor of London School of Economics. The late medieval crisis is best understood as exogenous mean pandemic, for pandemic infection, exogenous demographic shock which trigger, you know which is the trigger, it's a launch of interaction, demographic shock which trigger the process of institutional creative destruction. Somebody know this term of creative destruction? Okay, no. One bracket. I open one bracket. Creative destruction introduced one Austrian economist. His name, Joseph Schumpeter. Joseph Schumpeter took his university studies at the University of Vienna and left the country after the collapse of Austro-Habsburg Empire at the end of First World War. This is quite a typical strategy of the Central European scholars. For example, one of Hungarian physicists who emigrated to United States asked which is the Central European secret, which is the Hungarian secret, because a lot of physicists emigrated to United States, and he answered the Hungarian secret left the country on time, before the Second World War generally. Joseph Schumpeter followed the general strategy, left Austria on time, and he became a famous professor of University of Princeton. And he introduced the term of creative destruction. Why so interesting term? Because if we are looking, for example, one crisis, one revolution, very important to focus on. For example, historians generally use the term of creative destruction and revolution. The history, the human deeds not able to flow without conflict. Somehow broken the history, broken the historical process. Why? Because it's a little bit metaphorical approach, not enough flexibility of the contemporary institutions. Therefore, necessary to break. But the destruction, like for example, a Bolshevik revolution, a French revolution, which killed a lot of people. In the case of a French revolution, a lot of 10,000. In the case of Bolshevik revolution, a lot of million people killed each other very efficiently, but somehow opened the way for innovation. Often the way, for example, a French revolution, a modernization of European societies. And opened the way, the Bolshevik revolution, very high price, modernization of Russia, which the former institution and the former political construction wasn't able to introduce, wasn't able to open. Therefore, very important to understand destruction and deep crisis generally open the way for innovation, open the way for modernization. Continues. Creative destruction that raised the West European economy to a higher growth path by aligning incentive structure more closely with the exploitation of technological potential. How we can describe, how we can simplify this long definition? A 14th century crisis opened the way for modernization. If we would like to find the starting date of European modernization, it's happened on the 14th century. Why? Because the deep crisis destroyed the feudal institution, opened the way for centralization. In the first phase, absolute state, and later the national state, but the feudal structure destroyed. And opened the place, opened the space for innovation, like trade, like international collaboration, and a new form of relation based on agreement and based on regional organization of political and economic and the trade and commercial activity. Okay, no closing today's lecture, only one item we closed. And look at the next one. The next slide, look at first leading city. A first leading city of European, later a global economy. If we are trying to understand how formed the global economy, the first phase, a double centralized economy was a northern pole. A northern pole was low country connected to the Baltic area with Hanseatic League. It's a northern pole. And the southern pole, Venice, Genoa, and Pisa, and the distributor trade, a northern pole, industrial pole, and the southern pole. It's a distributive commercial pole, and between these poles, place of connection was fairs of Champagne Louis. This construction, in consequence of 14th century crisis, collapsed and opened the way a centralized system. And Venice was the first leading city, one focused leading city, which directed the forming global economy. Look at Venice. Why became a leading city, a leading city-state of European economy? Look at the economic consequence of crisis of subsistence system. How many percent decrease of GDP of different states? Look at England. England lost the GDP 65%. Why? So many citizens died who paid the taxes for the state. Therefore, this is a mirror, this is a direct indicator of population loss. A little bit same situation in the case of Spain. No Spain in the time, of course, but the former state, which later formed whole of the Spain. 73%. Therefore, the territorial state became very, very weak. Not by chance, England lost the 100 Years' War. Probably you know the story. In the last years, a lot of movie elaborated the problem of 100 Years' War between France and England. And Army of England was a mercenary army. And in consequence of great loss of income, of budget of government, no money for paying mercenaries. And therefore, step by step, decreased the England occupied and controlled area, and finally collapsed and lost. It was one of the most positive consequences of lost power. Spain similarly, but look at the Venice. The Venetian Republic, only 23% of income lost. Why? Because Venice specialized to luxury trade, silk trade and spice trade, which distribute products for aristocracy and the rich nobility. And very interesting, the flexibility of income in the higher part of society, much higher. Therefore, the consumer of luxury goods try to, for example, saving money somehow from former time and from the stock of fortune, activate the stock of fortune. Why? Because which is the most important value of nobility? Saving the prestige. Saving the prestige. I would like the best sword, the best arm, and the best castle, and for that invested the frozen fortune, which take to the lot of coins to the I don't know, it's a closed place in the it's digged on the garden, activated the frozen money which accumulated the European nobility after the crisis reactivated. Therefore, income of Venice, which distributed luxury goods, it's much moderate, decreased, produced. Therefore, if we are looking at territorial state like England, France, and Hungary, for example, and the city-state, Genoa and Venice and Florence, much better position moved and take under the crisis because the decrease of income much moderate. Look at Venice. Look at Venice on the period which dominated by Venetian economy. Somebody visited in Venice? Who visited in Venice? Okay, how long?
2 months ago.
What?
2 months ago.
But how long?
Oh, just a day.
A days. Yeah, it's not enough necessary to visiting again. Unbelievable place. Unbelievable place. Venice, it's artificial city, because this is the slogan of Venetian, non arat, it's a Latin, non arat, non seminat, non vendemiat. It means no sowing, no plowing, no plowing, no sowing, and no harvesting. We are not a peasant. We are a bourgeois. It's a citizen, a real citizen. Okay, look at one, because majority of audience never visited in Venice. Look at a short movie about Venice.
Rising from the waters of Venice Lagoon is a place like no other, the Italian city of Venice. Once the world's greatest port, here protected from the swells of the Adriatic, Venetian merchants created an impossible city of incredible wealth. Long hailed as the most breathtaking city on earth, there is no denying that sometimes Venice can be overwhelmed with admirers. But if you take your time and treat her gently, she will reward you with moments of profound beauty and bliss. Most visits begin in the central district of San Marco, where you find one of the world's great squares, St. Mark's. Arrive with the dawn, and the piazza will be yours to enjoy, without the crowds. St. Mark's Square is surrounded by some of the city's finest architectural jewels, but there are none greater than St. Mark's Basilica, the treasure house of holy relics, from the body of St. Mark to a lock of the Virgin Mary's hair. St. Mark was known as Mark the Lion-Hearted, and everywhere you turn in Venice entrance, you'll see this proud symbol. Across from the basilica stands the city's beloved bell tower, St. Mark's Campanile. Climb the tower to see Venice stretch out in all her marble and red-tiled splendor. Is one of the city's great landmarks, Doge's Palace. For centuries, this Venetian Gothic masterpiece was the seat of the Republic's power and prestige. Today, its courtyards, apartments and chambers are a museum, which celebrates centuries of Venetian achievement and glory. Just outside stand the columns of San Marco and San Teodoro, the traditional gateway to the city. Here, under the winged lion of Venice, begin your journey along one of the world's great aquatic thoroughfares, the Grand Canal. For almost 2.5 miles, the canal winds through Venice. It is her main artery, her lifeblood. Ride the Vaporetto dell'Arte and explore the canal's treasures at your leisure.
It's touristical information. Okay, it's a short sketch about Venice, but it's unbelievable place. Unbelievable place. I visited first time in Venice when I received a fellowship to Florence, and turned back by train from my fellowship and stop on Venice. And I have to decide continue the travel to Hungary, because I had to participate a geographical field trip in rural area of Hungary, or stop in Venice. And I decided the second option, and the place unbelievable. And it was quite a dangerous, because I didn't receive my graduation, my diploma, because didn't perform one field trip, and therefore postponed my diploma. But it was a good option, because Venice, unbelievable place, unbelievable, not comparable any other European city. No, it's very different. A little bit Oriental, it's an Eastern style, and somehow on halfway a European civilization and the civilization of the Constantinople. It's an Eastern Roman Empire. The history, early history of Venice, no reliable information. According to legend, the most reliable legend, on the time of age of migration, age of great way of age of migration, when collapsed the Western Roman Empire, founded refugees from escaped from Aquileia. Aquileia, it's a Roman city very near to the Adriatic Sea, but it's no documentary source. It's a legend, quite reliable legend. Very important peculiarity of Venice and the history of Venice, that early history of Venice was a part of Byzantine Empire, Eastern Roman Empire. Therefore, the aristocracy of Venice was and were Orthodox, not Roman Catholic, Orthodox. A lot of conflict made with the Pope of Rome, because followed and was under the control of Archbishop of Constantinople. And the richness of Venice based on spice trade. Okay, why so flexible? Why so strong power on the Adriatic Sea and the history of Italian peninsula, Venice? Very important, the big brother. Behind the Republic of Venice was a Byzantine Empire. And the early history of Venice, a lot of times saved army of Eastern Roman Empire from different form of invasion, weak and fragile republic. Very good geographical position. Because if we are looking the position and the location of the city, it's a bag. The bag is an Adriatic Sea. It's an Adriatic Sea. And the northeast bag, located to the northeast position of the bag. A lot of phase or a lot of line of defense possible to organize. The first one to the straight entrance of Adriatic Sea. Here there are a lot of islands which occupied in later history of Venice, which was the first line of defense on the entrance of Adriatic Sea. If somebody visited in the Croatian of former name Dalmatian coastal area, here there are a lot of small islands. And this was the second line of defense for Venetian Republic. This is the second one. And the third is entrance of legumes. Legumes, this is the channels among the different cities. Very good construction of defense. Economic adaptiveness, economic adaptivity. No innovation which made by Venetian trader. But each successful innovation, each later I will speak which form of innovation I would like to tell, each form of innovation adapted and larger scale. And the most important key of Venetian economy was control, and most important ambition of them was controlling of spice trade. Why? Because the rate of profit unbelievable high. One gold ducat which invented to spice trade made 40 to 200 ducats. Unbelievable. Recently, only perfume trade able to produce similar rate, or heroin trade, or hard drug trade. Unbelievable high. If some Venetian merchant perform a successful trade to Alexandria and back, may triple or double a fortune of him. And crusade, you know which is the crusade. Crusade, this was the great military campaign of Christendom and the Christian kingdoms for reoccupation of Holy Land, a Near East. Two ways to travel to Holy Land. The first one, there is a stick somewhere. Nobody knows stick. Okay. One way, a continental way. Riding whole of the Central Europe, riding through the Balkanic Peninsula, riding and very exhaustive. A second form of travel to Holy Land, maritime trade. Riding to Venice and buying a ticket for merchant vessel, and floating and sailing to Near East port, for example, Akon port. It's very comfortable, very good manner, but very expensive. And for crusaders, not necessary organize the travel, go and the back between Europe and Near East, but necessary to organize a logistical background, for example, transporting arms, transporting gunpowders, and so on, which necessary for a successful military campaign. Therefore, crusades opened the window for Venetian trader, and it's good option for increase the money, increase the fortune of the Venetian trader. The first city which specialized successful manner to international spice trade was Amalfi, located very near to Naples, but 2 times visited Normans, you know which is the Normans, Vikings, and destroyed the city. Closed career of Amalfi. The second way of rivalry for monopoly of spice trade, it was the rivalry among Pisa, Genoa and Venice. Distributor trade, as you remember, I hope. Oriental spices, pepper, nutmeg, ginger, cinnamon, crocus, and lot of different spices, which was very famous on that time. We can see rivalry Pisa, Genoa, and Venice. Pisa, it's closed out, very early phase of the rivalry. You can see this map about the Florence and Pisa war, and you can identify on the second map no Pisa. Why? Because Florence occupied the territory of Pisa, left two rivals, Genoa and Venice. Pisa is out. If we are looking at the rivalry between Genoa and Pisa, started the long war between two great commercial republics at the end of 13th century. The first military campaign won by Genoa. Genoa seized Chioggia. Chioggia, this is the entrance, the third line of defense of Venetian military strategy. But very interesting, at the end of this long war, one of the most successful Doge, you know Doge, which is the Doge? Doge, this is the prince. But very strange, prince who elected for limited times. Not a classical monarchy, because in the classical monarchy, after the election, there is some option for losing a power, kill the monarch. The second one somehow became a pensioner. It's very strange, very rare, but sometimes happen that it's retired. For example, one of the most successful Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, tried to reorganize the Holy Roman Empire, and when understood it's not work, retired, and went to monastery. And the last of his year lived in the monastery. It's very rare. One option, kill or die natural manner, no other option. But in the case of Venice, the monarch, the priest, it's named a Doge, elected for limited times. And there are a lot of different families who donated priests to the, but it's a republic, Venetian Republic, which direct one monarch. It's under a very strange, interesting feudal periods construction. Okay, Vettor Pisani, Doge, recaptured Chioggia and pushed back the Genoese army. And the position of Genoese fleet and the Venetian fleet, it was quite equal. And the long war closed the peace treaty of Turin. It was an equal position. But with this peace treaty started to age of Venice. Why? Because this was the last occasion when other Italian city-state discussed the leading position of the Venice. After the peace treaty of Turin, no other trading actor was such position that was able to discuss the leading position of Venice. The period between peace treaty of Turin to the end of 15th century, this is the age of Venice. Whole of European economy focused to the Venetian Republic. Whole of European economic change and economic processes in the last chain, in the last guiding position was a Venetian Republic. Look at this construction. The first one, occupation of Corfu. Occupation of Corfu. You know, this is the free defense line of Venice. the small island on the entrance of Adriatic Sea named Corfu. Somebody visited in Corfu? No? It's excellent place of tourism. The key operation was occupation of Corfu, because after occupation of and fortification of the Corfu, no fleet who was able broke into the Adriatic Sea. Therefore, it's fortified the first defense line and saved the safety of the city. And the next step, occupation a region. Occupation, the background of continental region. Terraferma is a closed area, occupied Padua, Verona, Brescia, and Bergamo. Therefore, the country of the Venetian Republic had a maritime area and the continental area made too. If we are looking at a commercial network of Venice, approximately this is the well area, it's Alexandria, Fair of Alexandria, and smaller fairs of Near East, the port city of Near East, and distributed the spice, the continental part of Europe, in continental routes and the maritime routes too. Okay, but for success of Venetian Republic, necessary to weakness of northern pole. The northern pole of European economy, you remember Low Country and the Baltic area, industrial area. For industrial area, very important number of consumers. In consequence of Black Death, 1/3 of consumer disappeared, died. Therefore, industrial income, industrial pole potential, it's decreased. Moreover, strengthen, I told you in the last week, I remember, if we are speaking about the traditional medieval industry, 80% textile industry, 20% any other. Therefore, very important strengthening of luxury textile industry. Somebody know which is the capital of Italian capital of fashion world? Milan, of course. And the career of Milan started in the 14th century. There is an old joke about why so good the English grass. You know? For example, one Hungarian traveler arrived to England. And in Hungary, for example, you will see that the grass is drying out quite early part of the summertime. Recently, partly this is the consequence of global warming, because in the Carpathian Basin, the most important indicator of global warming, not the temperature, but the decrease of precipitation. Okay, why so good the English grass? And ask the Hungarian traveler, and the local people tell that very important using the best seed and irrigation necessary, and for example sweeping the best devices and cleaning with the best devices, and necessary tell for 500 years. And a little bit this is the same situation in the case of Milan. Milan became one of the other one is Paris. Milan and Paris became the capital of European fashion at least 700 years ago. Therefore, it's unbelievable gap. Not so easy to compensate. Okay? Good. Look at the budget of Venice. It's a quite general that no official budget of the feudal and the medieval state. Everybody organized the local census and the local documentation of the income and the expenses, and no general budget about the state. But some situation when employees, high employees of state, accused, for example, with stealing, embezzlement, and so, started a legal procedure. And the part of verification that stolen or not, that collected, recon, in great table, the income of state. Doge Tommaso Mocenigo in 1423 accused with embezzlement. In this case, for legal procedure, collected the income and expense of Venetian trade. It's quite a general. In the history of Hungary, the first general documentation about the state income and expense, it's made 1498. Before that, no general documentary information about the income and expense of Hungarian state, which founded 500 years before. No, because the bureaucracy, feudal bureaucracy, it's not so comparable with the modern bureaucracy. Everybody organized the local affairs in the level of county and the level of settlement and city. No general overview about, only special situation. Look at a budget of Venice. In this budget of Venice was its estimation, you know which is the national income. National income. National income, a new value, the simplest definition. National income, the new value which produce one state 1 year to other. Only the new value. There are much more complicated definition, but we may use this simplest version. And we are looking at national income, new value. How many percent of national income able to state picking, gathering with help of taxes and the fees? According to estimation, 5 to 10%. If we are looking at a modern state, for example, a Hungarian state to the governmental budget, gathering year by year 48% of national income. If we are looking at the trajectory of the evolution of state, we can follow how increase the rate which gathering the state from national income. Starting position was a Venetian state with 5 to 10%. And national income, not the tax income of Venetian state, it was year by year 750,000 ducats. This is the whole budget of state. Next step. National income of the city, because we may calculate that the rate of taxes might change between 5 to 10%. Therefore, whole of national income we may estimate between 7.5 to 50 million ducats. I hope you can follow me. The next step, estimated population of Venice was 150,000 inhabitants. Per capita income, city and the city dwellers may change between 50 to 100 golden ducats. It's very dry information, but there is a reason why we follow this list of information. Population of commercial empire. It's mean Corfu and Padua, Brescia, Bergamo, and the colonies, a lot of colonies of Venice. Total national income, because national income and the income from the national income, 1,600,000 ducats, golden ducats. Monetary flow up to the state estimate to 40 million golden ducats, which passed to Venice. Why so interesting? It's very dry information. In the first view, it's very useless information, but take into the context. If we are looking at and compare with the contemporary state like France, like Spain, like England, or like Hungary, look, we can understand why it's so important, this level of income of state. If we are looking at Venice, if we close the view only to the city, no more, only the city, the device and the monetary power of the state may change between 750,000 or 800,000 dollars, golden ducats, or whole of colony and whole of empire, 1.6 million ducats. Compare with the France, the population of the France on the time, 17 million. 17 million. And we are looking the dimension of the governmental income, the same. But in the case of Venice, only 150,000 dwellers, life necessary to organize. But in the case of France, 17 million inhabitants and huge dimension, spatial dimension of empire. Spain a little bit same, England same dimension, and Hungary a little bit lower dimension. This is the reason of Venice. Small population able to produce the same monetary and commercial power like the greatest territorial state of Europe, of contemporary Europe. Not by chance, Italian cities introduced the first generation of golden ducats. In Europe, no minting of golden ducats before this period, which indicated missing of golden decades, dimension of trade very small. It's enough using a silver ducats. But in consequence of dynamic growth of Venice, dynamic growth of Italian cities, increased the dimension of the trade, and very useful to use and mint golden ducats. Okay, how used Venice, a huge richness? City construction and reconstruction. As I mentioned, Venice artificial city. Why artificial city? Because the soil of island, small island, not so steady. Therefore, necessary to pushing down a huge quantity of forest and the trunk and the moss necessary to hammering to the it's unstable soil. And if somebody somebody used a wooden material necessary to replace each 40 years. And you know, probably you know the problem of Venetian buildings are sinking. But the wall, it's a paper, really a paper wall. Somebody know, for example, a movie of James Bond movie, first movie it's a card play.
Casino Royale.
Yes, Casino Royale. And the closing scene of Casino Royale, it's happened in Venice. And if you remember this scene, you remember the wall of the palace. It's very, very thin. Why? Because the carpenter minimized the weight of the wall to the unstable soil. but no good option, because recently, in consequence of recent global warming, water level rising and the city is sinking. It's sinking. And construction and reconstruction necessary to invest huge amounts. The next one are diplomatic networks. A network of embassies, it's learned from Byzantine Empire, because it's very useful to picking and gathering information about trading horizons, because with help of good information, much easier to organize a good political and military operation. And trade, a post of trading post beside the diplomatic network, and the mercenary troops. Not the Venetian people fought on the army, but the best soldier came from the Balkanic Peninsula. My guess today, which nation, which Balkanic folks offer the best soldier? There is a Turkish student. This Balkanic folk produced the highest number of great vizier. It's a I don't know which is the good Turkish terms for the general of Turkish army in the Osmanli Empire. Vezir? Not vezir? No. Okay.
Do you mean history?
A little bit under the Sultan, under great vizier. I don't know. The general military leader of Turkish army.
Yeah, Vezir, right.
Vezir.
Yeah.
Okay, Vezir. The same folks made the highest number of Vezir in the Turkish Ottoman army, and the same people formed the highest number of mercenaries of Venetian Empire. Which nation? Which Balkanic nation?
Armenians?
Sorry, I am deaf.
Armenians?
Armenian? No, Armenian is not Balkanic.
Okay.
It's a Caucasian. Okay, other author?
Serbia?
It's not Serbian. Much harder than the Serbian. You know the movie of Taken?
Albania.
But Albanians, of course, harshest warriors whole of the Balkanic Peninsula. A Taken, movie of Taken, for example, who is the enemy of who is the star of Taken? Which American? Liam Neeson, yeah. And the enemy of him, Albanian mafia. It's not high prestige of Albanian mafia not came from the world of the fiction. Albanians, the bravest soldier, even the Middle Ages. Majority of Venetian army came from Albanian community. Somebody visited in Albania? It's mountain area, high mountain area. Living in the high mountain area, for example, walking to the relatives, is a great training. Going to the other valleys, no any form of the transport, it's a great training. Okay, mercenary troops, and for the soldier, necessary to pay in cash. No artificial money. Necessary to pay in golden or silver ducats. Good. Look at the world economy of Venice. The central area, you know, there are in the world economy a core area, a semi-peripheral area, and a peripheral area. A core area, Venice, Milan, the towns of Lombardy, Genoa, and Florence. And the semi-periphery, it's a German word, Augsburg, Vienna, Nuremberg, Ratisbon, Ulm, Basel, Strasbourg, Cologne, Hamburg, Lübeck, Bruges, London, and Southampton. This is the semi-peripheral area on the time, and everything which outer, it's a peripheral, of course. If we are looking the axis of the trade of Venice, which focuses to the Venice, there is a northwestern to southeastern, and the other one northeastern and the southwestern axis. Okay, how introduced innovation which made out of Venetian trading practice? One of the most important adopted innovation of the Venetian trader was the innovation of the fondux. I don't know, it's an Arabic word, it's a good or bad pronunciation. It's a fondux. A fondux introduced in the caravan cities. Caravan cities. For example, Arabian Peninsula, for example, Sahara Desert. Some people who arrived with caravans to the city know any information. It's possible a peaceful trader, it's possible it's a bandit. Therefore, in the caravan cities, for the member and for the participant of the caravans, closed a compulsory segregated area. Obviously by saving the local people for the dangerous people and saving a member of caravans from local bandits. It's a double interest. In the case of Venetian trade, because the highest spice trade organized a Venetian trader, but in the second phase, the second form of trade, a local distribution organized to trading communities, Jews and Germans. Very interesting. The rivalry between German and the Jews started in the 14th century. The bad relation sowed deep roots between two trading communities. But from the point of view of Venetian trader, the most important danger that Jews and the German, it's taking over a Venetian trader and organize the routes of the trading distribution, Alexandria or ports of Near East. Therefore, a Venetian political and a commercial leader introduced a technology of the fondux. A German sub-trader and the Jews sub-trader closed a compulsory segregated area. Some special district which closed to walls and closed a local guard of city and guarded a local guard of city. For German, a district, a German trader district named Fondaco dei Tedeschi, it's a name of the district, where lived compulsory, mandatory living place for German, and the other one, a ghetto. In the case of Venice, a ghetto, no other meaning than name of district. But later, in other part of Europe, a ghetto became a synonym of district, of segregation of Jews people. But originally, it's no other meaning, only the name one district. Okay, look at the commercial innovation. If we are looking, the most important commercial innovation of high Middle Ages, late Middle Ages, look at the first one, the first gold coins. Generally accepted opinion, the first gold ducats minted in Florence, because three candidates, Florence, Genoa, and Venice. First winner, Florence. The second one, check and bill of exchange. It's artificial money, Florence. Holding companies. Holding companies, probably you know, a small owner organize somehow like a fishes, organize a large community, therefore became a much powerful actor in economic and trading operation. Introduced and innovated in France. The third is Florence. Double entry bookkeeping. You know which is the double entry bookkeeping? It's unbelievable great innovation. But no Greek or Roman or Arabic people wasn't able, or Maya civilization wasn't able to introduce. The Florence and the Florentine trader introduced first time. Recently, if somebody would like to learn household keeping, this is the basic information, double entry bookkeeping. It's me, there is a book, two sides, income, expense. Very simple, very simple. But this innovation introduced by Florentine trader, maritime insurance, maritime, great innovation. Why? If somebody paying into the insurance company a small amount, like for example, the same logic follow, recently it's possible, better now, security car insurance. Calculate how many people, for example, 3 million people paying a small amount, and there is a proportion of the accident, and from this background able to compensate everybody. A little bit same logic in the maritime trade, which innovated Florentine. No coastal area, it's very far from the coastal area of Mediterranean Sea, but introduced by Florentine trader. The first regular sea link between Flanders and via Gibraltar. Genoa, introduced by Genoa. Search direct routes to Indies, which performed Columbus. Very interesting. The first theory about sailing westward, published in Genoa in 1,291. One sailor brother, very easy to memorize his or very name, a Vivaldi brother, violin musician. Vivaldi brother published one text, a good way sailing to Indies westward. Genoese Vivaldi brothers. In which city-state was born Columbus? Genoa. Unbelievable. There is a city when 200 years before the real travel of Columbus invented its good idea, sailing westward. And 200 years later, the people was born on the same city, perform. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Okay, but no Venetian invention, Florentine or Genoese. But Venice and the Venetian trader adapted each of innovation and applied unbelievable, efficient manner. Okay, just only one picture. It was the Bourse stock of exchange of Venice. It's very important peculiarity. It's open place, because in the Mediterranean area, very low the frequency, anyway in the summer half year, the frequency of the rain, therefore broker and the businessman walking on the square and discuss with each other. Okay, thanks a lot for your attention.